let's dive in. Today we're tackling a subject that's both kind of creepy and super fascinating.
Uh-oh, what have you gotten us into now?
Viruses.
The tiny terrors of the microscopic world. I knew it.
We're going to explore a whole list of 40 of these little guys, from the ones we all know and hate, like the common cold,
Don't remind me. Still recovering from the last one.
to some you've probably never even heard of.
Sounds like a real deep dive. You know, it's kind of wild when you think about it.
What's that?
How these tiny things, I mean, we're talking microscopic, can cause so much chaos in our lives.
Yeah, it's like a David and Goliath story, but Goliath is invisible and multiplies like crazy.
Exactly. And they've shaped human history, caused pandemics, and we're still figuring out all their tricks. But hey, knowledge is power, right? The more we know, the better we can protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's start with a group we're all way too familiar with, the ones that seem to just be part of life. Influenza, the common cold, and coronavirus.
Oh, yeah, the trifecta of misery. Those are some real all-stars. Well, maybe not stars, more like recurring villains.
Yeah, the unavoidables. What makes them so tricky?
Well, these viruses are constantly evolving. Think of them like master escape artists, always changing their disguises to sneak past our immune systems.
No wonder it feels like you can catch a cold a million times a year.
Exactly. Just when your body thinks it's figured one out, boom, a new version pops up. But the good news is, even though they're constantly evolving, the basic ways to prevent them stay pretty much the same.
Okay, so what can we do to keep these villains at bay?
Well, the classic advice still holds true. Wash your hands often, wear a mask if you're feeling sick, and maybe most importantly, stay home if you're under the weather.
It's amazing how much those simple things can actually help.
Right. It's like basic hygiene is a superhero power.
Seriously. And don't forget about vaccines. They've been huge in the fight against the flu. And of course, the development of COVID-19 vaccines was a total game changer.
No doubt about it. Speaking of things that make you want to pack your bags and maybe hide in a bunker,
Uh-oh, where are we going now?
mosquito territory. Dengue, Zika, West Nile, yellow fever.
All spread by those tiny little bloodsuckers. It's crazy how such tiny insects can carry such potent viruses.
It's like they're tiny flying syringes. And did you know research suggests that certain blood types might actually be more appealing to mosquitoes?
Wait, seriously? Mosquitoes have a favorite blood type. That's both fascinating and terrifying. So if someone's planning a trip to an area where these viruses are common, what should they do, aside from, changing their blood type?
Huh. Well, that's probably not necessary. But being proactive is key. Repellents, long sleeves and pants, mosquito nets, all those things can really make a difference. And of course, check for any recommended or required vaccinations before you go.
Just like packing for a trip, but instead of just worrying about clothes and sunscreen, you got to think about these microscopic enemies.
Exactly. But before we get too lost in the scary side of viruses, let's talk about some wins. Polio, measles, mumps, rubella. These were once major threats, but thanks to vaccines, they're way less common now.
It's got to feel good, knowing you're part of a field that's made such a huge difference in fighting these diseases.
It really does. But we can't get complacent. There are still challenges like vaccine hesitancy and access issues in some areas. We gotta make sure everyone has access to these life-saving tools.
It's a good reminder that public health is a marathon, not a sprint. Okay, deep breath. Let's talk about some of the heavy hitters. HIV, Ebola, Marburg. These are the ones that definitely strike fear into people's hearts.
No doubt about it, those are serious threats. But knowledge is key here. Fear shouldn't paralyze us. It should motivate us to learn and understand. Take HIV, for example. It attacks the immune system, and it's mainly spread through bodily fluids. Safe sex, not sharing needles, and getting tested regularly are all crucial steps to prevent it.
So knowing how it spreads gives people the power to make informed choices about their health.
Exactly. And with Ebola and Marburg, these are hemorrhagic fever viruses. They can cause severe bleeding, and outbreaks often happen in areas with limited healthcare resources, which makes containment really difficult.
So for folks traveling to or living in those areas, what precautions should they take? What are the red flags to watch out for?
Avoiding contact with bodily fluids of anyone who's sick, even if you don't know what they have, is absolutely crucial. Be vigilant and practice meticulous hygiene.
It sounds like common sense, but it's easy to forget those basics when you're in a new environment or dealing with a stressful situation.
Absolutely. Now, let's switch gears to a sneaky group of viruses, HPV, hepatitis B, Epstein-Barr. These can hang out in your body for a long time without causing any symptoms.
That's a scary thought. Walking around feeling fine, but unknowingly carrying a virus. What makes these so tricky?
Because they can be silent for so long, people can spread them without even realizing it. Regular checkups and open communication with your doctor are super important. Early detection is key.
So regular screenings are crucial, especially for these sneaky viruses.
Definitely. For instance, HPV is linked to several types of cancer, but the HPV vaccine can drastically reduce that risk. And hepatitis B can cause serious liver damage, but thankfully we have a vaccine for that one too.
It's remarkable how much vaccines have changed the game in preventing and managing viral infections.
Absolutely. So while these viruses might be stealthy, we have tools to fight back. Knowledge and preventive care are our best weapons.
It's like we're building up our defenses. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, from the sniffles to some really serious stuff. It's almost like we've taken a tour of a microscopic battlefield. But before we get overwhelmed, remember, we're not powerless against these little guys.
That's right. Simple things like washing our hands and getting vaccinated can dramatically reduce our risk of getting sick.
It's like having an invisible shield against these tiny invaders.
And knowledge is what makes that shield even stronger. Understanding viruses helps us make informed choices to protect ourselves and our communities.
We still have a whole bunch of viruses to explore on this journey. Hold on to your hats, folks, because in part 2, we'll be diving into even more fascinating facts and mind-blowing insights about these powerful little organisms.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to our virus adventure. Ready for round 2?
Oh, absolutely. We've covered so much ground already, but I know there's a whole lot more to explore. What's next on our microscopic safari?
Let's set sail for a virus with a pretty notorious reputation, especially if you're a fan of cruises. Norovirus.
Uh-oh, norovirus. I've heard tales of this one. Not exactly the kind of souvenir you want to bring back from a vacation. What makes it such a party pooper, especially on cruise ships?
Well, it's highly contagious, and it just loves close quarters, like the kind you find on a ship. It causes gastroenteritis, so you're talking vomiting, diarrhea.
Yeah, that's definitely not what you want on a luxury cruise. So is there any way to prevent this cruise crasher? Or are ships just destined to be norovirus hotspots?
Thankfully, we can fight back. Diligent hand washing and frequent cleaning of surfaces can make a big difference. Norovirus is tough, but it's not invincible.
It seems like hand washing is our superpower in this viral world.
It really is. Speaking of hygiene, let's talk about another virus that's a big concern for young kids, rotavirus. This one can cause severe diarrhea, especially dangerous for infants and toddlers.
Oh, that sounds scary, especially when they're so little. Is there any way to protect them from rotavirus?
Thankfully, there's a vaccine for that. It's one of the routine childhood vaccines recommended by doctors.
That's a relief. But even with the vaccine, are there other things parents should be doing to prevent rotavirus?
Definitely. Along with vaccination, good hygiene is key. Hand washing, disinfecting surfaces, especially important in places like daycare centers where germs can spread like wildfire.
It's a constant battle. But I guess that's just part of being a parent. Okay, let's move on to a virus with a truly scary reputation, one that sends shivers down my spine just thinking about it.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Rabies. It's almost always fatal when symptoms show up, right?
Unfortunately, that's true. Rabies is a serious viral infection that affects the central nervous system. It's usually transmitted through the bite of an infected animal, dogs, bats, raccoons, and once the symptoms start, the outlook is very grim.
So it's not just a threat in rural areas. People in cities could be at risk too. What can people do to avoid this deadly virus?
You're right, rabies is a threat anywhere wild animals are present. Vaccinating your pets is crucial, and avoiding contact with wild animals is a must. Never approach or touch them, no matter how cute or friendly they might seem.
That's a good reminder. And what if, despite all the precautions, someone does get bitten by an animal?
Seek immediate medical attention. There's a post-exposure treatment that can prevent rabies from developing, but it has to be given quickly after the bite. Time is really of the essence.
It's a race against the virus.
Wow.
Okay, let's talk about a group of viruses that have caused some major global scares in recent years. SARS, MERS, and of course the one we're all too familiar with, COVID-19.
Ah, yes, the pandemic trio. Respiratory viruses with a knack for spreading like wildfire and causing widespread chaos.
It's amazing how interconnected our world has become, but that also means viruses can travel the globe in the blink of an eye. What have we learned from these pandemics?
They've been a harsh reminder of how vulnerable we are to infectious diseases and how important global cooperation is. We've learned that public health measures like masking, social distancing, and testing can really slow down the spread.
It feels like those things became the new normal for a while. And of course, vaccine development played a huge role in lessening the impact of these diseases.
Yeah.
It's incredible how quickly scientists were able to come up with effective vaccines.
It really was a testament to scientific ingenuity. The development of the COVID-19 vaccines in particular was remarkably fast, but we can't forget that these viruses are constantly evolving.
It's like we're in a never-ending arms race, always trying to stay one step ahead.
It's a challenge, but one we can't afford to ignore. We've come a long way in understanding viruses and developing ways to combat them, but the battle is far from over. We have to stay vigilant, adaptable, and continue to invest in research and public health measures.
So we've explored a ton of viruses today, from the common cold to some truly terrifying threats.
Ah.
It's been a wild ride.
And we're not done yet. There's a whole other world of viruses waiting to be discovered, and trust me, we've got some real mind-blowers coming up in the next part.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. Get ready, folks, because we're diving even deeper into the fascinating world of viruses. Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll uncover even more surprising insights and incredible facts about these microscopic wonders. And we're back for the grand finale of our virus voyage. We've covered so much ground, from the sniffles to some really serious threats, but I have a feeling we've saved some of the most interesting stuff for last, right?
You know, it's amazing how much we focus on the viruses that make us really sick, but there are tons of viruses out there causing all sorts of effects, some mild, some not so mild.
It's like there's a whole secret world of viruses we don't even think about. So what hidden viral wonders are we uncovering today?
Let's start with a group that causes a real mix of symptoms. Enteroviruses, you've probably heard of some of them, like hand, foot, and mouth disease. That one's common in kids.
Oh yeah, hand, foot, and mouth disease. I remember those outbreaks at my kids' daycare like it was yesterday. Every other week, it seemed like they were coming home with a new set of spots. Luckily, their cases were always mild, but it definitely made me a hand-washing fanatic.
It's super contagious, especially among kids. Most infections are mild and clear up on their own, but some can cause more serious problems like meningitis or encephalitis.
So it's one of those things where you need to be aware, but not freak out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, how about a virus that can be a real worry for babies and little kids? Respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV?
RSV, yeah, I've heard about that one, especially lately. It seems like a lot of parents are worried about it. What makes it so concerning, especially for the little ones?
Well, it's incredibly common. Most kids will have had it by the time they're 2 years old. For most kids, it's just a mild cold. But for babies, especially preemies or those with other health issues, it can cause serious breathing problems, like bronchiolitis or pneumonia.
So it can range from a little sniffle to a serious health scare.
You got it. There's no vaccine for it yet, but scientists are working on it. In the meantime, prevention is key. Lots of hand washing and keeping babies away from sick people.
It's amazing how many viruses we encounter, especially as kids. It's like our bodies are constantly fighting off these tiny invaders.
It really is a microscopic battleground in there. And speaking of battles, let's talk about viruses that can jump from animals to humans. We already talked about rabies, but there are others, like simian immunodeficiency virus or SIV.
Simeon, are you telling me there's a monkey virus out there?
It might sound like something out of a movie, but it's real. SIV infects primates, and it's actually the ancestor of HIV, the virus that causes AIDS.
Hold on, are you saying HIV came from monkeys? That's mind-blowing.
It is pretty wild, isn't it? Scientists think SIV jumped from chimps to humans sometime in the early 1900s, probably through hunting and contact with infected animals.
Yeah, it really makes you realize how connected human and animal health are. Makes you wonder how many other viruses are out there in the animal world just waiting to make the jump.
That's a question scientists are always trying to answer.
Okay, well, that's enough monkey business for me. What other weird and wonderful viruses do we have on our list?
How about molluscum contagiosum virus? It causes these little pearly bumps on the skin that kind of look like tiny warts.
Oh, I've seen those. They do look like little pearls. Are they anything to worry about?
Not usually. They're harmless and tend to go away on their own. But they can spread through contact, so good hygiene is important.
It seems like good hygiene is the superhero of the viral world.
Absolutely. And last but not least, let's not forget about bocavirus. It's a common one that causes respiratory infections in kids, usually just cold-like symptoms, spreads through those pesky respiratory droplets like a lot of the viruses we've talked about.
It's amazing to think about this whole hidden world of viruses around us.
You said it. Viruses are everywhere, and we're constantly interacting with them. The key is to be aware, take precautions, and see a doctor when you need to.
I think that's a great takeaway from our deep dive into the world of viruses. Knowledge really is power. The more we understand, the better we can protect ourselves.
And we're not helpless. We have vaccines, antiviral medications, and public health measures that can help us fight back against these tiny invaders.
It's a testament to human ingenuity, our ability to face challenges head-on, even when those challenges are microscopic.
So, as we wrap up our virus adventure, I encourage everyone to keep learning, keep asking questions, and stay curious.
Because in the world of viruses, knowledge really is our best defense. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through the fascinating world of viruses.
Stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay healthy.